Hello, video 3. Hopefully you've already watched me kind of give a mini lesson on finding the common denominator when you're adding fractions that aren't cut in the same size pieces. And then the second video was finding equivalent fractions. So changing 2/4 into 6/12. So cutting them into smaller pieces so that we can make these sizes match. So after we added, we got 10/12. And this is kind of a picture of what that looks like. Okay, but you might take a test and you get 10/12 as your answer, and 10/12 isn't an answer choice. And the reason that is because we can go back and think about it this way. Do you ever take a taste of something that someone's made? And then so a cake, you take some frosting and you eat it, and then you try to mash it back together to where no one can tell that you ate it. No? Just me? Okay. So this is basically what we're doing, is we're taking these cut pieces and we're going to mash them back together. Because as y'all know, if I don't have to deal with big numbers, I don't want to. So we're going to try to make these numbers smaller. So remember when we took 2/4 and we multiplied it by 3/3. We can do the same thing and just divide by 1. So if you think about it, 5 times 1 is 5, but 5 divided by 1 is also 5. So you can divide anything you want by 1 and the value stays the same. So we're going to see, I'm going to take my 10/12, and I know that both of these are even numbers. So I can always try to divide by 2. But remember how we made our multiples chart and we did our skip counting to see which number works with both of these? We can do the same thing, but with factors. Now, this is a little tougher because we don't have a multiplication chart that gives us factors. But what we can do is I can take my 10 and I can take my 12, and I can think of all of the factor pairs that work together to make these numbers. For example, 1 times 10 is 10. That doesn't look like the 1. 2 times 5 is 10. And there's nothing else that works. So these are my factors of 10. It's the things you can multiply together to get 10. Whole numbers. Okay. Now for 12. 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So we're going to pick the one that's the biggest we're just going to pick one that they have in common. And the one they have in common is 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide this fraction by 2/2, which is the same as 1. And we're going to get 5/6. So we're basically going backwards. We're not cutting it into more pieces. We're squishing the pieces back together. So 5/6 is the same amount of pizza as 10/12. It's just cut in half as many pieces. Okay. We haven't really done this much, so I'm going to do another example. Let's get rid of this. And let's see if we can simplify the fraction. 8/10. Okay, so I'm going to write my 8 and I'm going to write my 10. And I'm going to think of all of the factors I can for 8. Well, 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. That's all I can do. Let's do the same for 10. 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. So, which one do they have in common? 2. Now, we could have already done this because these are both even numbers. But you're not going to get it wrong if you do the factor chart. So, let's divide by 1. But in this case, we're going to make that 1 2/2. And we're going to get 4/5. So we're just undoing what we did when we created an equivalent fraction when we were adding and subtracting. So if this was our answer, we can undo that extra cutting, squish it back together, make the pieces bigger by finding a factor that they have in common and dividing by that number, 2/2. So 8/10 equals 4/5. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 to work on if you want to pause, and then I'll provide you with the answers. So let's simplify 8/12, and let's simplify 3/9. So you pause and solve these. Okay, if we do our factors of 8 and 12, we get 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Our 12 factors are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Okay, on this one, we have 2 in common, but we also have 4 in common. Now, the bigger the number we divide by, the smaller our answer is going to be. And I always want small numbers if possible. So we're going to divide by 4/4, and we get 2/3. If you divided by 2/2, you would have gotten 4/6, and that would have been a good start. Okay, so if we do 3 and 9, and you draw out the factor chart for 3 and 9, you get 3 times 1, and you get 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So what factor do they have in common? 3. So we're going to divide by 3/3. That's the same as 1. Forgot to do that over here. It's the same as 1. So when we uncut these pieces and smush them back together, 3/9 is the same as 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So if I have 1/3, pretend that's even, this is the same as 3/9. Okay. Now I'm going to do one more example, and it's if you get an improper fraction as your answer. So if I get an answer, say I've added 2 fractions together, and I get 13/4. That's funky. So what I need to do is I need to pull out as many 4/4 as I have. Okay, so if I pull out, there's 1 4/4. Okay, so that makes this 9/4. There's 2 4/4. That would make this 5/4. And there's 3 4/4. Okay, so what do I have left if I take away 4, 8, 12? I have 1/4 left over. Okay, so I'm going to take away the whole numbers one at a time that share my denominator. So 4/4, 4/4, and 4/4 can come out of this number, can be subtracted out of this number, and I'm left with 1/4. So what is this the same as? It's the same as 3 whole numbers, 3 and 1/4. Okay? So if we do another one of these, if I have 5/3, I'm going to take away a 3/3. That equals 1, right? And then how much do I have left over? I have 2/3 left over. So I have 1 and 2/3. So 5/3 is the same as 1 and 2/3. If I was going to draw a picture of this, well, if I have 3/3, it would be this whole thing. And 2 extra would be here. So if you're ever stuck, 5/3, just draw it out. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/3, and that looks just like 1 and 2/3. Thank you for playing. I hope this was helpful. Have a fantastic day.